Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. It is Tuesday, March 24th, and today we're going to be talking about the new moon in the sign of Aries. So happy new moon, everybody. You are all getting the same forecast at the beginning of April, that's for sure. I actually saw something online the other day that was like a list of what everyone's forecast for the month of April would be. You know, it's just like a joking meme, and it was like Aries, you'll be in your living room. Taurus, you'll be in your living room. Anyway, but there is a lot more than just you'll be in your living room, hopefully, to this new moon cycle that we can, at least that we can gain by looking at the signature of this new moon cycle. So I'm going to just give you some of the basics of what this new moon cycle is all about. First of all, new moon in Aries, which is the exaltation of the sun. The sun is now exalted. It picks up a huge amount of dignity in Aries. We have a lot of really exalted solar qualities coming through right now. And also, this new moon in Aries is brought to you by the sponsorship of Mars, the ruler of Aries, who is also exalted in Capricorn and heading across the sign boundary into Aquarius, where it will make a conjunction with Saturn. So let's just show you what that looks like. Here's Mars heading into a conjunction with Saturn. That conjunction is still a little ways off, the beginning of April, end of the month into the beginning of April. But again, the reason that this movement of Mars is so important is because this is the patron or the host or the steward of our moon cycle, with the new moon happening in Mars's sign of Aries. Now, the sun and Mars being exalted at the same time, with Mars moving from Capricorn into Aquarius and into the conjunction with Saturn, is the best, most basic way to understand what the moon cycle ahead is bringing on an archetypal level, even if we're all, stuck in our living rooms. So let's try to give you all a rundown of what that might include. First of all, the sun as a symbol is a symbol of kings and queens, of rulers, of great, big, bright, powerful authorities or leaders. It's a symbol of greatness and brightness. It's a symbol of clarity and knowledge and the light of the soul on a more esoteric level. But it's also a symbol for things like fathers and things like the heads of state, presidents, or rulers, or even CEOs or leaders in any field or industry. You can also think about the sun as mastery, as someone who's very knowledgeable and masterful. So those are all solar qualities, and it's very yang. It has a yang kind of bravado to it, but it's not like Mars, where Mars is going to be more of the sort of swashbuckling hero archetype, and or the aggressor or competitor or warrior or athlete, or even risk-taking pioneer. The sun is going to be more of the ruler, the governing, centering source, like the mission statement of a company and its visionary leader. That's more of the sun, as opposed to Mars, which is going to be like the chief executive, maybe officer, as opposed to the owner, let's say. Or Mars can be more like the right hand, or the right hand man or woman of the ruler. Mars is going to be more about the executive action and force and strength and muscle and assertiveness. It has more punch behind it. But when you put the two together, obviously they're very similar to one another in some respects. And so the sun is exalted in the sign of Mars. Of course, there are some things you have to watch for during this lunar cycle. One of them would be hot-headedness, or being sort of rash or extreme or impulsive or reckless, especially with regard to one's will and the actions that one may take rather more impulsively or impatiently. Big signature of impatience potentially around this lunar cycle, but also of bravery, leadership, action. So one of the things that I like to do before every new moon is I like to cast the I Ching. And in the I Ching, there is a hexagram that I got, hexagram number 17. And I got that hexagram back last night when I was looking at this new moon cycle. It was a single unchanging hexagram that I got in response to asking about what this new moon cycle was really about. Let me read you some of the translations of hexagram 17 and how it goes along with these martial and solar themes and the fine line between leadership, bravery, courage, nobility, honor, all kind of sun Mars qualities at their best. And on the other side, rashness, being impulsive, reckless, impatient, brash, hot-headed, domineering, the negative side of Sun and Mars. So number 17 is called following, and it has to do with leadership. It's a hexagram that has to do not only with leadership, but how one obtains or cultivates a following, or how one leads people that are following, or who one should follow and what one should follow. Now, this does not have to be only between people. This can also be within. We all know that getting our ego to become a servant to the higher self is like leading a bull to water. If you pull really hard on the bull, it'll just like sit down, and then you're stuck. So how do we coax the ego toward its own, our highest interest, and towards what will really serve us, and helping the ego come into service of what's best for itself? That's not easy for most of us. And this is also an applicable hexagram for that relationship of how to get our ego to follow a higher calling, to follow a higher self. Or you could say that it's also about how to follow the best impulses or instincts within ourself, and how to notice when the wrong instincts or impulses are taking over, and when we are following those impulses and getting ourselves into trouble. Again, this is also a hexagram that can pertain to how we pursue leadership in the world, or how we act as a leader in the world, or who we follow, when to follow, and why to follow, and when not to. So here's what the hexagram says. It says, and I'm going to read you some different translations: following indicates successful progress and no error through firm correctness. Following has supreme success, perseverance furthers, no blame. Sublime success, righteous persistence brings reward, no error. The sublime success comes, of course, only to those who follow what is right, namely the will of heaven, or those whose own will embodies it. Great success, it is of benefit to continue, no blame. So this is in this hexagram, the initial reading, it's like a very intense version of a fortune cookie, because the treatises written about the hexagrams are like, voluminous. So at any rate, this hexagram says, when you follow the leader who is in reception with the will of the gods, with the will of heaven, with the right path, then everything is greatly developmental and smooth. Sounds obvious, right? But there's a little warning in here, which is that it's beneficial if it's correct, then there is no fault, and everything good follows, everything good develops. Which is to say that there is also a way in which we sometimes are hypnotized and led along by let's say, a leader who is doing something with a great deal of enthusiasm, with a great deal of confidence, with a great deal of assuredness. But it's not the will of heaven. It's not good, or it's not correct. Then we'll be met with disaster. Then we will find that there is fault. Then there will be blame. Then there will be error. All of the things that the hexagram tells us there will not be is if we are persevering in following the person or the impulse within ourselves that is virtuous, noble, and true. Then we can follow with great enthusiasm, and it's going to be great. Things will go fine, and we'll all be okay. But on the other hand, if we follow that which is not worthy of following, and we have to be careful, because many things the hexagram is implying that are not worthy of following will present themselves quite confidently in the world as noble, true, virtuous. This is it. I assure you, this is right, and everything will be fine. Just follow me and just do it this way. So then the hexagram becomes really interesting, because then the question gets pushed back in. How do you tell what kind of enthusiasm, what kind of assuredness, and what kind of strength in ourselves or in the world is worth our vote of confidence? So the I Ching goes on, and it gives us some commentary upon the images. the image is that of thunder, in thunder in the marsh, thunder in the marsh. And it's, I won't explain the trigrams so much, not the least of which because I'm not at all some I Ching guru, but um, the commentary about this image of the trigrams and the hexagram says the superior person, in accordance with this, at nightfall enters his house and rests. Thunder in the middle of the lake, the image of following. Thus, the superior person at nightfall goes indoors for rest and recuperation. The hexagram symbolizes thunder rumbling within a swamp. When darkness falls, the supreme person goes within and rests peacefully. There is thunder in the lake, thus do superior people go inside and rest when the sun goes down. Thunder in the marsh is the symbol of following. Thus, the wise person retires toward the twilight of the day. So, this hexagram comes right after hexagram number 16, which is enthusiasm. And there's a teaching in the sequence of hexagrams in the I Ching that's teaching us about enthusiasm and the voice of leadership. When someone is trying to sell you something, you have ever gone to buy a car before or something like that, and you're in the mood to buy. You're in the mood to, you're in the mood for some good news. You know what I mean? And you go there, and maybe your dad goes with you when you're, buying your first car. You go to buy it from used from someone, and your dad's going to be there to be the voice of reason or whatever, something like that, And let's say you go to that car dealer, and the car dealer is like, you're like, so, you're trying to ask these critical questions, thoughtful questions that a buyer should buy, but you're talking to someone who's there to sell a car. You know what I mean? And that's not always going to, so you're in a precarious situation because their enthusiasm, their assuredness that this is the right car for you, this is the best car, this is only going to take you in a good direction, you're only going to be happy, you're only going to be able to afford it. All goodness, just follow me right over here to the register. Let's get it all settled. You drive home with it right now. And if you've ever been in this situation, you start buying, and yeah, it's all going to be great, and this little voice in you is like, you're being duped. Maybe your car ends up being fine, but you know what it's like, even if it's in that little moment where you're just like, you realize you're being taken for a ride, before it's even your car, you're being taken for a ride in it, so that moment is archetypal. And that moment is being called upon in this teaching about the wise person who goes inside when the sun goes down. Why is the I Ching calling on that particular line? And it has to do with the sequence from enthusiasm to following. We know that we're susceptible to following voices of strength, confidence, clarity, leadership, especially in times that are uncertain, or especially when we have a desire that's not met. I feel uncertain about the future. I feel like I want something that I don't have. I feel uncomfortable. I feel impatient. We're very susceptible to enthusiastic directives. Well, just go do this right now. It'll be great. It'll be awesome. It'll solve it all. Do it. Go. What's the message? When something stirs, the thunder in the lake is an image of motivation and enthusiasm starting to stir, the will of heaven starting to stir. But the wise person is listening to the rhythms of expansion and contraction, daytime and nighttime. And so the wise person, knowing when it's time to advance and when it's time to follow something that's an authentic, real, trustworthy source of confidence or source of enthusiasm, they will go at that time. And when they know that it's time for contraction, that it's time for pulling back, being careful, being patient, biding our time, waiting, being still, resting, that they will step back. So the difference that the I Ching is telling us between whether we follow the right voice down the right developmental path and all is good, or whether we follow an impulsive voice, a restless voice that can't tell the difference between nighttime and the dark time, that wants to advance even when it's time to retreat, that wants to go forward even when it's a time to really come in and wait. That we have to be careful, because we're at a moment right now in this new moon cycle where we're standing on the threshold between right action and impulsive and reckless action. And this is something that can apply to all of us, especially right now because we are confined, because many of us are confined. And that will amplify the need to want to follow something toward the light, toward movement, resisting or rejecting stagnation if it's appearing in your life in some way, as you should, as anyone should. No one wants to become stagnant. But this hexagram is such an important message to us about choosing the right voice to follow at the right time for the right reasons, and not being afraid of also listening to the voice of the soul when it's time to retreat, when it's time to come in, when it's time to be in confinement, to be patient, and to bide one's time. Knowing the difference is everything right now, not just for us, but in the world. So we also see this is the way that it relates back to the astrology, because it's a new moon in Aries, which is impulsive, which wants to act, which is like the battering ram that wants to burst forward. It's ruled by an exalted Mars in Capricorn that wants to, plow ahead, that is very concerned about those economic markets. It's very concerned about depression and, economic nightmares, and is very concerned about being holed up and not being productive. Or that's very feeling stir crazy, so we have to be careful, because where there is that sense of oppression, limitation, and constraint, these Mars energies want to work through the obstacles and plow through the barriers. And the bad news about this is that if we listen to the enthusiastic voice that is incorrect, that is not actually wise, then this very same energy becomes part of a downfall. How is that also reflected in the status of exaltation? In ancient astrology, when planets are exalted, it means that the planetary quality, Mars, for example, exalted in Capricorn, or the sun exalted in Aries, that those qualities, it's sort of like they're standing on a mountain just being like, oh, like, like it has this theatrical, over the top quality. And William Lilly, who's a famous Renaissance horary astrologer, says, be careful, because exalted planets are, especially exalted planets in the angles and birth charts, he says, but exalted planets in general are prone to excess, to hubris, and to exaggerated opinions about themselves, or almost like they're prone to inflation. So that's exactly what the hexagram 17 is about. On the one hand, it's a very auspicious hexagram in the I Ching, because it's saying right before you, right now, that voice in you, like, let's just give a simple example. Let's say you want to spring clean your house, and when that voice comes up where it's like, I'm gonna put on my shorts and my knee-high socks, and I'm gonna just kick the crap out of my spring cleaning projects, like, so you just, you've got the sunscreen on your nose, and you're out in the yard, whatever, cleaning everything up, and you're just getting at it. And everyone knows how great it feels to follow the voice of action and to mobilize, the life force in service of something that's developmental and progressive and like that. So there's that energy right now, which for all of us sitting at home, maybe not knowing what to do with ourselves, there could be a heck of a lot of things to do, whether it's, you're going to just rip out some P90X in your living room, or, if you guys ever know what that is or not, but my wife and I did that like 5 years ago. It was pretty fun. Anyway, you're going to, do some P90X, and your jail cell is going to become prison cell push-ups. Or if you're going to take to some projects, it would not surprise me if this next month ahead we go from phase 1, where everyone's blowing trumpets off the rooftops in Italy or Spain or wherever it was. If you guys saw those videos, they were really heartwarming. I was laughing because I said, no, we're changing very rapidly into people doing more like what that, I think it was a French guy did, which was to run a marathon on his porch. You know what I mean? So it wouldn't be surprising if we saw a little bit more of, like, our inner Rockies coming out in the month ahead with whatever we felt like we wanted to do with our within our confinement. Now, at the same token, look into the mundane and the collective, and you could see people like President Trump yesterday, not surprisingly at all, given what this new moon energy is about. It's coming through, and martial energy of Sun in Aries and Mars in Capricorn. He was like, no, this is not going to be months, but this is weeks. and he said, we can't let the cure be worse than the disease. I was like, just, this is me personally. If you agree with that, that's fine. I don't mean to debate you or anything or get into big fights with people, but from my ears, I was like, dude, you're just impatient. You're just a market driven guy. You're really concerned about the economy, and you're just being really impatient. And I got to laugh. I don't watch the news much. And, but that was my initial impulse. Is I was like, this is a moment where I just think that Donald Trump just absolutely doesn't want to be patient right now. Either that, or he was just selling this really confident voice to people who are really uncertain about the economy, which is, maybe understandable, but not of course what doctors are telling us that we should be doing with the social distancing. So at any rate, I got a kick out of that, knowing the astrological energies of the moment. I was like, yeah, and why is it unlikely that following an impulsive, overly confident, overly optimistic voice right now would get us in trouble? Because where is Mars going? In the first week of this new moon cycle with the exalted sun, what is it supported by? It's hosted by an exalted Mars. That's a recipe for overconfidence. Then what happens? Mars goes into Aquarius, where it loses all of its dignity and goes into an immediate conjunction with Saturn. Limiting, oppressive, constraining, confining. So if we are right now to follow the best within us, it is probably going to be a little bit more rational, a little bit more careful, a little bit more observant. Notice if the best impulses in yourself are also paying really careful attention to those rhythms. Is it time to push out? Is it time to pull back? If you're pushing and not listening to the rhythms, probably this moon cycle, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Because this is a moon cycle where that confident bravado of Mars gets checked really quickly by Saturn. And it goes from confident to measured. And a lot of good things we can still follow, a lot of good impulses. There can be a lot of good action, bravery, courage, mobilization of the best in us to do good things and get good results, both in the collective and personally, even if we're in the confines of our living room. But it won't happen unless from the get-go, we check the potential bravado of the sun and Mars right now. And we only follow that enthusiasm, which is in touch with the wise person. What does the wise person do? Thus, the wise person retires when the twilight comes, which means you know when to go out and when to come in. So that is what I wanted to share with you for this new moon cycle. I also want to invite all of you to join me for a new series that I'm going to be doing on Bhakti Yoga. This series is for people who are interested in learning more about yoga philosophy and Bhakti Yoga in particular. Bhakti Yoga, simply put, is the science of loving God. And it is the practices of cultivating love of God in the heart. We talk about that in Bhakti Yoga through the figure of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and other sacred texts, and in all of the beautiful stories about Krishna, and also the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita and things like that. There are many very practical, beautiful things that you can do to practice Bhakti Yoga. I invite anyone who's interested specifically in learning more about Bhakti Yoga to come check out the new series that I'm doing. It's private. It's only for those people who subscribe to my newsletter. It's free. Just got to subscribe to my newsletter at nightlightastrology.com if that is of interest to you. Also, you can look forward to a few things coming out you can find, again, I think, did I just say nightlightastrology.com? Yeah, I did. So you can join my newsletter on the homepage of my website. I have some other videos that I will be coming out with this week, a part 2 of Saturn in Aquarius, which will give you some more good things to think about. And then I will also be coming forward with overview of the astrology of April, horoscopes for April, and hopefully they will say something more than just you'll be in your living room this month. But finally, my wife will also be with me to discuss the astrology of April and different kinds of herbs that you might match up with the different energies of the month. So she's going to be a new staple of my monthly overviews, and you'll get to know her a little bit better and her relationship with plant spirit medicine. So I look forward to all of that in the next week or so to come. And please leave your comment section in the comment section below. What are you feeling with this Mars Sun energy? What are you doing in your spare time right now? If you're stuck at home, I'd love to hear what you're up to and how you see this Mars energy and Mars Sun energy playing out. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.